What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
And we are here to share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
So I'm so excited about today because we are talking about the 1992 supernatural horror film Candyman.
You don't believe all that nonsense anyway, do you?
I don't. You?
No. All right. Candyman, 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 Candyman. Candyman. Oh, you chicken! You have to do it 5 times. Come on, go.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
No,
I did
better
it.
say I'm sorry.
Spooky.
Yay. Spooky, supernatural things, all of the sounds and ghosts and goblins. So it was written by Bernard Rose, and it stars the beautiful, the infamous Tony Todd, Virginia Madsen, Vanessa Estelle Williams, not the other Vanessa Williams singer, but the actress Vanessa Williams, Xander Berkeley, and if you didn't know, Bernard Rose himself has a little guest starring role in the movie. Do you guys know who he was, who he played?
I really hope it's not the obnoxious guy at the restaurant. Is it really?
It absolutely was. It really was.
No.
Yes.
That is so
the writer and director.
That is
that
so
part is so
cringy
cringy
to me.
Yes.
Oh,
Like,
that's so
but
hysterical.
Is it meta or is it not meta that the white man director of this movie, made himself kind of the mansplainer? Like woof.
Absolutely disgusting.
Speaking of mansplainers, hi, Brian, producer.
Oh.
Hi. Let me mansplain
Always
to you
here with
how,
a nice word.
Yeah, let me mansplain to you how he made himself a mansplainer in the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
good times.
Yeah.
But also a little bit of tidbit movie info. If you didn't know, the movie was based on a short story by another English playwright, Clive Barker, and the short story is called The Forbidden. I haven't read it. I don't know exactly how it all correlates together.
So fun fact, now that we're just talking about this stuff, like we're going right into it. So the original story is, believe it's set in Liverpool, and it part of its themes are like the class system. But when they adapted it for Candyman, they decided to use Chicago because Chicago, maybe at the time, or maybe that's just where they felt like it needed to be. The socioeconomic differences in Chicago really presented themselves more than any other ones. So they decided to put it there. And that's why they used Cabrini Green and Chicago and all of that. Also, Bernard Rose's wife at the time was going to play Helen, and Virginia Madsen was going to play the best friend character. But then when they decided to make the best friend character a black woman, Virginia Madsen lost her job, but then Bernard Rose's wife, who was playing Helen, got pregnant. And so Virginia Madsen took over for her as Helen. However, if Virginia Madsen was not available to play Helen, they were really highly considering Sandra Bullock.
No.
Yeah,
I just can't. I'm trying to think of what that movie would be.
And then Tony Todd, they originally wanted Eddie Murphy, but he was way too expensive at that time. So Tony Todd was that. But
wait a minute. Okay, so
this
Eddie
is Wikipedia.
Murphy.
This is what Wikipedia told me.
I mean, but can you imagine Sandra Bullock and Eddie Murphy? It would literally be like
a completely different
film. A totally different movie.
Yeah.
Can't imagine.
Some other fun facts before we like get into it is Bernard Rose hypnotized Virginia Madsen before all of her Candyman scenes. So she would do like 10 minutes of hypnotism with him, and then they would start filming so that she like just to show the trance that he has over people. So that's wild.
Wow.
Also, Virginia Madsen is apparently very allergic to bees. So whenever she was in a scene with bees, they had to use like baby bees or that don't have stingers. So they would, destingify some bees or something like that. And then Tony Todd in
Probably
his
not
contract.
good for them.
No, probably kills them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then Tony Todd, I think something where the fact like he negotiated every time he got stung by a bee, he'd make $1,000 extra, and he got stung like 23 times, something like that. And
that's incredible. That's how you cheat the system, right there.
Yeah, well, like you were talking about on our on the Dogtooth episode, like make sure you look at that contract and think about anything that you could put in there.
Yes, absolutely. That's genius.
And then the last one I'll say is that Tony Todd actually had a mouthpiece in his mouth so they could put the bees in there, and it took it took a half hour to put the bees in there, and they were very committed to that. So that's mansplaining trivia time.
I mean, we love it, producer Brian. Yes, but it's so crazy because you had the foresight to say all of that, because I literally had that as one of the questions of how in the hell did they do that bee scene, because it does not look like 1990s CGI. Like that looks like some real fucking bees.
Those are bees.
Yeah.
Those are
unlike
buzzy
the
bees.
Unlike the bees at the beginning, where it's clearly like a green screen of like bees in front of Chicago,
like flying. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that I don't under. Oh well, we're kind of failing at this, but spoiler alert: if you haven't seen Candyman, you know, it has something to do with bees, different from the Wicker Man bees, but just putting that out there. If you haven't watched this, you should watch it before listening to this episode.
Trigger warning, bees. Lots of bees.
Lots of bees. Oh my gosh, do y'all play Cards Against Humanity at all?
I played
in the past, yeah. Is there a bee card?
There is a bee card, and it literally just has bees with a question mark.
That's what I think about when I think of the opening with the bees in the background of Chicago. Just bees?
Like, this is what this is going to be about. And it's not bee movie, but it's just bees. Like, okay, got it. So yeah, now that we're into it, have you guys seen the movie before? Is it your first time? I don't think it's anybody's first time watching it.
No. I'd seen it before. I'm trying to remember when I had seen it first, but I don't have like a very strong, I definitely didn't watch this movie like growing up. It was definitely a movie I saw when I was older, probably like in college or post-college for the first time, because it doesn't have that like, childlike fear that has been instilled in me when I see this movie. But I've seen it a few times now, and there's always been parts that like kind of confuse me. So I'm hoping that we can learn from each other while unpacking some of it today.
No, absolutely. I definitely have a lot of questions. So I always knew about this movie, but I never watched it until quarantine, because at some point in early quarantine, it was on Netflix, or it was streaming on like Netflix or Hulu. One of those.
That's where I first watched it as well.
Oh, right. Same. I definitely watched it early quarantine, and I was super stoked because I never saw it, but I've seen many a documentary, many a Watch Mojo on YouTube that has talked about the movie and
interesting,
like spoilers about it. There's actually an incredible documentary called Horror Noir, The History of Black Horror Movies, that is on Amazon. And I think it was streaming on Shudder at one point, but I watched it on Amazon, and it literally talks about right from Night of the Living Dead with like the first kind of lead Black male horror, but it goes into like when this movie came out and kind of the shift, because we were shifting from the blaxploitation of like all of the Blackula and Blackenstein and like all of the, Black people being pimps and Black women being whores and all that shit, And then you get to this movie where, yes, there's some questionable things that are being done and said that we will discuss. But it was the first time where you're seeing like this horror lead that is like this educated. He comes from education. He comes from wealth, and still like wreaking havoc on, you know, all the people. So yeah, if you haven't watched it, it's a horror noir history of Black horror movies, and Jordan Peele has a lot to say on there. And of course they get to like get out in the 90s trope of the Black person being the first one to die and all that stuff, but it's really good. So in watching that, I saw a lot of clips from Candyman because Tony Todd speaks on there too about like his experience. And he's just, can we just give it up for him? Like some sirens for him, because he is a beautiful, tall, Black. When he enters in for the first time with that deep voice and he gives you a look, and she's like hearing his voice in her mind, I was like, wow, this is the sexiest thing I have ever seen in a horror movie. And I know he's going to kill everybody, but
with a build up too. Like it's like, it's a while into the movie before you actually see him, but like he carries such a presence, like just with his voice every time you hear him. And then you finally get him in the parking garage. But like, I think we're like 45 minutes into the movie at that point when he shows up.
Absolutely.
Oh no. So I was reading, I'm going to mansplain again. I was reading that, so a lot of Clive Barker. A lot of his work, it takes juxtapositions against each other, or like the opposites. So like heaven and hell, like pleasure and pain and stuff like that. And it's been written about this, and this movie is like, part of it is like incredibly sexy. And I think that like, I would say like for me at least, 90% of the sex appeal of this movie was like not like Virginia Madsen in that like weird. People would automatically go to the scene where like she's like taking her bra off with the blood and like, you know, like that stuff. But like
station.
Yeah, but like Tony Todd is a hunk in this. He's so sexy. Like his backstory is about like love and sexuality. His face is so beautiful. His voice is, I mean, he's a sexy guy. What can I like? I was all in on Candyman. And then he got those bees, and I'm just like, too much, not sexy. I mean, I don't know.
Right, and that's where you stop. It's like, it's not the hook for a hand and the slaughtering of people, it's the bees. And then you're like, bees?
Because you see the passion in his eyes when he's slaughtering people. Like, I understand that, but the bees.
He's like grunting and like making these like sounds. Cause then at the end, well, I guess we'll get to that, but there is a lot of like grunty, like moany sounds anytime there's murders happening, which is interesting too. I think like you brought up the pleasure pain thing, and I think that's like part of it.
It definitely ties in well how it was directed. But speaking on that, Jamie, do you want to give just we're already into it, a basic plot summary?
What are we talking about? Sure, I will do my best. Shout out to Wikipedia for helping me out.
What's the plot?
The movie stars Helen, who is a grad student who is working on her thesis with her friend. I think like they're working on it together. So it's like her and Bernadette, who's her bestie. And they're working on a thesis on urban legends, which like what a great like topic to get into. I'm all in.
Absolutely.
So in doing their research, they learn about the Candyman. This particular urban legend is tied to this housing project, Cabrini Green. And so they start to do more research specifically into Candyman. They go to the housing project, to Cabrini Green, to interview the neighbor of somebody who was allegedly murdered by the Candyman, Anna Marie. And she's raising her son, Anthony, which like, this is exciting for the sequel. Oh man, it just made me think of the TikTok of the person, which like I absolutely am going to talk about. But anyway, I'm getting really sidetracked. So then they learn more about the urban legends from who I did not know, the director, which is such a bummer because like I hate that guy in this movie. Yep. And they talk about how like the real life Candyman was the son of a slave and became an artist. He would like paint other wealthy people. And then after like painting, I don't know how this happened, but anyway, he ends up with the daughter of one of the other like families, and they become lovers, and she gets pregnant. And then the wealthy father ends up like very horribly murdering the Candyman. It involves bees. It involves honey. They cut off his arm. It's just like all really violent. Oh, and then they burn his corpse on a pyre and they scatter his ashes across the land that becomes Cabrini Green. Later on in Helen's research, she gets attacked by somebody who's calling himself the Candyman. He ends up getting arrested, but then she encounters the real Candyman, very sexy. She passes out because she's under his spell. And she wakes up in Annie Marie's apartment, apparently murdered that poor dog. Oh yeah, trigger warning, dog murder. And then she's arrested by the police. She's very confused about what's happening to her. It seems like she's being set up by the Candyman, which is a bummer because he's so handsome. And then she's released from jail. She goes home. Bernadette's coming to visit her, but so does the Candyman. And the Candyman brutally murders her bestie. Then Helen is admitted into the hospital. And she is kind of like not really sure what's reality or not. Once again, the Candyman shows up. She escapes from the hospital. She goes home. We didn't even talk about her husband, but she's married to a professor at the school that she's doing her PhD. And throughout the movie, it's like alluded to he's having an affair. And then she finally is confronted with it when she comes home and sees this like young student in their home. This is very long-winded. I'm so sorry. I'm just like really into like the storytelling of it.
It's a great story.
Oh, also all this time, Annie Marie's kid is missing, Anthony. And she finds him when she goes back. She goes back to Cabrini Green. She willingly submits herself to the Candyman to be his victim. And then she finds baby Anthony in this bonfire that's being built. Shout out to the pyre that was happening in the past. And then she saves baby Anthony. And then she burns to death in this like really insane scene that happens at the end. She has become the victim. And then at the very end, Helen's husband, you know, he's so forlorn and grieving the loss of his wife. And he looks in the mirror and he says Helen's name 5 times, a la Candyman, a la Bloody Mary. And then she comes and she murders the crap out of him with her hook for a hand.
Murders.
And that is Candyman.
And that is Candyman.
And that's the plot.
I would also like to justify that murder in saying he was cheating on her with one of his students.
Oh, what a satisfying ending.
And so that was satisfying. So on the most general note, did you like the movie? Either one of you?
I do like this movie. Again, like there's definitely some problematic elements to this movie, but like it's not like, I feel like it's not like the most in your face slasher film because like there's a lot of underlying like meaning that's trying to come about. I also like, you'll hook me with anything with an urban legend.
They'll hook you with anything?
Yeah.
Actual.
Yeah, like I love urban legends. I love that that's kind of like what is fueling the story. But there's like so many problematic things where I'm watching this movie. I'm just like, oh, Helen, like I have a real problem with the white savior trope. Like it's awful. And like, there's so many things that Helen is doing. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Like it's just like so wildly inappropriate and like cringy that I don't like. But like, it's such an interesting look on like housing and like social class and like that, like I really like that the story like does focus on that, not just on like her being this white savior. I also really like with the urban legend piece, just what needs to happen in order for his like spirit to be alive and like people to believe in him and like fuel that.
Like Freddy Krueger.
Is so interesting.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It is the same exact thing, but like there's something so different about this movie in comparison to like a classic like Nightmare on Elm Street, like that kind of slasher vibe versus this, like next to each other, it just feels like such a different movie because I feel like there's so much more that needs to be unpacked in Candyman versus Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, like those types of slashers. But yeah, I do like this movie. What about you?
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it even more the second time around. And I think it has a lot of components that make a great horror film. And I wrote some of them down. So simple exposition and rules. Like, I just love, you know what's happening. You know what's going on, why he's here, why he's doing the things that he's doing. Like, and it sets you up off the bat. What were you going to say, Brian?
Okay. I agree and disagree with you at the same time. I do not think the rules were clear. I do.
Okay.
I think that, like, and maybe this is based on the fact that, like, I had heard the Bloody Mary and Candyman like things as a kid going to sleepaway camp.
Yes.
So I have like
sleepaway camp.
Oh yeah. But like, I definitely, this is my second time watching it, and so I definitely paid attention to the exposition scenes a lot more this time. I feel like that's what you do second viewings, at least of horror movies. When she called upon him the first time, she didn't believe and she thought it was a joke. So like I don't understand, like, does he, like, when he comes back, like, does he live in that decrepit apartment in the back? Like, is he a real person now? Is he not a real person? Like, when she calls him in the room with the when she's being held in the, like, insane asylum or wherever they called it, like, and the guy appears, like, is that him coming, like, 100% to life because now she believes in him, and we're tying into the urban legend aspect of things? Like, if you believe in something, it's true. I was confused as to, like, when he's real, when he's not, when she's murdering people, when he's murdering people. That rules wise, that was a little unclear to me, but also I may have been just a little slow while watching it this time, but like I just, like, wasn't picking up on those things. If I would love your help.
Those are all great things that I didn't even think about, because I think of Candyman as supernatural all the way through. He can get to whoever he wants to get to whenever he wants to get to him. Like, it doesn't matter. I think the rule is that you just, as long as you call on him, he's there to do whatever he needs to do. But I think when she first called him because she didn't believe in him, and I was also thinking to myself, like, why is he attacking, like, her specifically? But then in the end, he was like, well, Helen, it was you all along. And she's, like, in the little picture that looks like she might have been a descendant of his lover. Maybe he always was kind of, like, attached to her or knew her and wanted her to believe in him because she was kind of like a descendant of that era. I don't know.
So, okay, sorry. I know this is not where we want to go with this, and we want to talk about Cabrini Green and, like, how beautiful Tony Todd is, and we have, and I appreciate that. But, like, I really like this movie. It's super weird. The score by Philip Glass is super weird. The
beautiful,
but like, it's everything about it is super weird because it's not usually a slasher, like you both said. Let's say she's a descendant. Doesn't matter if she's even a descendant. Let's say she looks like her. It doesn't matter. She's just a blonde white woman. Like, let's just go for that. Like, what did that actually have to do with it? Because at the beginning, when those two, like, wild teenagers call the Candyman, he just kills them. Like, it's not a big deal. Again, she is blonde, so, like, do you have to be blonde to call them? I don't know. But, like, they kills them. But so, so she's making them kill people, like, to make her feel like an outsider so that she can join him again. Like I don't think I totally understood that thematic element. So and the rules behind that, like, is it just a pure coincidence that she called him? Like, are we supposed to just, because supernaturally that's exactly what she would be doing her thesis on, because, like, she's drawn to it, because she's drawn to the Candyman, because she's a descendant of the Candyman's maybe I just need a little bit more explanation behind that. If you're gonna go all in on the fact that she's a descendant or looks like his paintings or whatnot, like, I needed a little bit more, because it felt very separate from what they were trying to do with everything else. And that's what I'll say about it. But I really liked it still.
No, fair. And to take the descendant part aside, I also was like, well, he's killing all these people off the bat, but he's not killing her. But I think it might have been because everyone who does call on him, even though they're like, oh, ha, 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 this is a joke, they still kind of believe. But he was, like, attacking her because he was like, because you're not believing in me, like, my followers are not gonna, or, you know, it's the same thing with, like, Freddy Krueger. Like, when people stopped believing in him, he stopped being able to get into the town. And I think maybe because she had that disbelief and her thesis was trying to say like, this is just a folklore and going to put out into the public, like, you should not be believing this. Maybe that's why he kind of like kept her and wanted to bring her into the fold so that he can kind of like cut off her sharing to the world, like, why you shouldn't believe this thing. Does that make sense? Kinda, maybe not.
More than before. A lot of what you said is also what Jamie kind of said to me while we were watching it. So now I just feel like an idiot. But like, because also now that you say this, I'm also thinking that the beginning sequence, like the biker, what Sam Raimi's brother,
Yes.
and the blonde woman, like that also is just the interpretation of what all those students were saying. So that's just like I could also take it that way. That this does.
But
help.
I don't think. Yeah, but I don't think he's ever like an actual real person, like living in the walls of Caprini Green. Like,
but what then? Like she finds him there, I guess. Like and she's like.
Well, that's where his
lure.
ashes were scattered.
Right.
That's like where
so
his pyre was. It's more symbolic, I think.
There, but but he goes and attacks in other places.
Yeah. Okay. And she's having the visions because he's giving her the visions, or are the visions just for the audience?
Well, that's a good question.
Like when she's like when we see the close up of her eyes, like flashing in and out.
Yeah. And then like she sees like where the baby is and stuff like that. Sees where Dr. Manhattan is.
I think he was kind of sharing that with her because the point of him taking the baby was because he knew that she would sacrifice herself to save the baby. Like it was just another way for him to lure her into his fold. Like it wasn't really about the child, but he knew that she would try to save him, and she like
related to the fact
that
he got her pregnant in a former life. If we're going with that path,
if we're going there too, then add it in. But I mean,
I'm still super skeptical about how. So we talk about this all the time, like intent versus execution. I believe that was the complete and utter intent of what they were trying to do. In execution, I question it. However, still a good movie. Still
very good. And I think what also makes it good is like playing into the familiar. Like we all have been saying, like we've heard these tales before, like Bloody Mary was a thing, and light as a feather, stiff as a board was a thing. And so
have you done Bloody Mary?
I have not. I've been at slumber parties. Shout out to the slumber parties where people would try, but they would never actually do it. But we definitely also did light as a feather, stiff as a board, because the craft is.
Oh my God, The Craft is an excellent, excellent movie. We also did that at slumber parties.
And no, it's great. And I also am a sucker for a creepy kid that's warning you to not do shit and you still do it. So going back
which
to
this
Candyman.
movie had as well. Yes.
Yes. So Jamie, going into what you brought up, because I'm glad you brought this up, of the savior complex, because the way that I was yelling at my screen when they first get to Caprini Green and they have Vanessa Williams' character, Anna Marie, and how Helen just walks up in her house.
Oh my God.
Like she did not invite you.
No.
And her friend Bernadette is literally like not saying a word, not touching anything. Helen's touching all the stuff, getting towels from everywhere. Yeah. And she's like sitting down on the couch, like, and Bernadette is literally like just seeing the difference of like Bernadette just standing there, like not saying anything, not touching anything. And Helen is just like all over the place. And I'm like, you walked into this lady's, you had the audacity and you thought it was okay to just like, and it's a similar parody to when people want to touch natural hair on Black people. I feel it's the same comes from the same family.
Yeah. But it was like more aggressive than just like a microaggression. It was like you just like walked into a stranger's home.
You walked into, and I was so upset. Like, how are you going to play that little boy and tell him, unless you're too scared to tell me where Candyman is, Child, that's a child.
Oh my God.
What are you doing?
He's also the MVP of the film, especially that last look at the very end of the pyre.
Yes.
Like, he's my MVP. If
Then when he throws the fire, isn't he the one that throws it into the bonfire? Because he's like, Candyman's in there, and then like they throw it in.
I know he's the one that's telling everybody like, y'all got to get on this. We need to burn him, like now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, also, woman, what are these tactics that you're using to try to get the thing that kind of like took me out? And it was a 90s thing, was the camera that she did have. And when the film went out, and you know how it rewinds back to the beginning because the film is gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I remember those.
I remember when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now she's in Cabrini Green. So with everything that was happening with the walls and the mirrors, Jamie, do you want to discuss the parallel, the TikTok?
Oh man,
video?
It was wild. So someone sent it to me, which kind of feels on brand of like a friend of a friend found this thing. But yeah, so someone sent it to me on Instagram, and it's this like 4-part TikTok of this woman who there's like air blowing in her bathroom, and she doesn't know where it's coming from. And she realizes it's actually blowing out from behind her medicine cabinet, and she pulls it out. And there is literally, just like Candyman, a full on empty apartment, like on the other side of the medicine cabinet.
Crazy.
She is crazy. I mean, like, so sorry if she ever listens to this episode, but she very bravely goes through the hole in the wall into the other. Oh man, after seeing this movie and then like watching real life Candyman things happening, I am like shrieking watching this TikTok. I can't believe that she like had the balls to go in there, because that's just like insane. Like, you don't know what's on the other side. Yeah. And like goes in there, and there's just like a full blown empty apartment on the other side, a la Candyman. Very unsettling.
Like, would you, if you were in that situation?
No,
Jamie,
there is nothing. If I would stop at there's air blowing through my medicine cabinet. Like, I'm going to cock that like myself. Like, that's as far as I go. Yeah. There's nothing that would compel me to pull the medicine cabinet out from my wall. But like, let's say that I was, feeling really brazen in that moment and did, like, there's literally nothing that would get me to go through that unless the Candyman was already on my side of the apartment pushing me through. Like, nothing would get me on the other side of that hole.
Absolutely not. Like, but I say that now, but I can be adventurous in moments of drunken escapades. And if I had the opportunity, I would definitely have other people with me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going in there by myself. No. Like, that's a negative. At that point, I'm calling my landlord and I'm saying I need half off my rent for the rest of my life. Like,
yeah.
What is
or
happening?
Break down this bathroom wall and like give me a mega apartment.
Exactly. I mean, we all know New York apartments anyway. They like, it's an apartment of an apartment of an apartment of an apartment. Mm-hmm. But that was crazy. But on the human behavior thing, since we're talking about what we would and would not do in this movie, there were multiple times where she was hypnotized by Candyman and she wakes up and somebody's dead, and we don't see if it was him that killed him or if it was her, but how everything looks, it's set up that she is the killer and that she did those things. In the moment where she got put in the psychiatric ward, and she calls on Candyman and he kills the doctor in front of her. And at this moment, she is strapped to a chair. And then he does unstrap her. But after he kills the doctor, she like goes and flees. Okay. For me, my reaction to all of that, to prove my innocence, would be to keep my ass in that chair, wait for people to come to me, tell them to roll the cameras and say, look, I didn't do this. Look on this camera. I was tied up and this man just died. We need to have another conversation about if I killed these people or not. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I understand the fight or flight of like, let me just get the hell out of here. But if you're trying to prove your innocence in a situation where it definitely looks like you are the killer, if there were cameras in there, I would I would not have moved. I don't know. What would you do?
Maybe my memory is terrible, which it is, but I don't remember like that interaction being recorded. I remember like the TVs that he was showing her where the Candyman wasn't actually in her room, or like we can pick him up on, that broadcast. But I don't remember that like their sessions were being recorded. Is that what was happening?
Well, I don't think their sessions were recorded, but they're in a hospital and there's cameras in every room. Are there not? So like pull up the camera in the room. Yeah,
that's a good point. Because I guess I don't really know. I mean, I've never, actually, that's not true. So I interned at a behavioral health hospital in my second year of grad school. And I'm trying to remember like if there were cameras places, like part of the hospital did have like an inpatient psychiatric unit for people who were like in crisis and like immediate risk to themselves or others. And like those are short-term stays, which is not what Helen was there for like a month. And like didn't even know because they gave her some like heavy duty psychiatric meds.
Is that legal? Side note, is that legal?
I mean, like it's
without her consent?
I guess it depends on like what her treatment plan is. Like Thorazine is an antipsychotic medication. So like that's for some of the like diagnoses that feature like psychosis. So like when you see things that aren't really there, hear things that aren't really there, which is like kind of what they're saying is going on with her when they show her the tapes and like play back what she thinks is happening. But it also like can kind of be like a very heavy sedative, and like really like kind of hampens down people a lot. So like it's understandable if that is like the normal course of treatment, but it's pretty wild that like that would cause her to like lose time. I also wonder if like the time loss is more attributed to like more Candyman magic because of like his hypnotic type effect on her. She is like losing time because of him. So like I kind of am blaming the Candyman for that one. But in terms of your tape question, I think like that would be what I would love to happen is just like please roll this back if there are like cameras in all the spaces. But I don't actually know. I feel like that's like such a trope in movies that feature like specific mental illnesses and things like that. They're always like recording people. It made me think of like The Ring. That was like the first thought that I had, where they record the little girl and they're like, why are you doing this? And she's like, I like to hurt people, whatever she says, I forget. But yeah, that's like a very tropey thing.
Okay. Well, fair. I'll take that because all of my knowledge is from movies and not actually being in hospitals to be like, they're recording everything that you do. But I have another mental health question, if you don't mind. How do you try, or how would you try to reconcile yourself for doing something awful or bad when you weren't in your right mind? Like, i.e., if somebody is like schizophrenic or whatever, and how do you begin to try to like pick up the pieces when you know that you weren't in your right mind, but you still did something like horrific? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, because like we were talking about earlier, like, is it really her that's doing these things, or is it the Candyman? Yeah. I'm inclined to believe it's the Candyman because I feel like it's kind of this big setup of like, he is trying, like, because of what happened to him and what the circumstances that created him, he is essentially like exacting the same type of scenario on her, where like nobody is willing to help her or sympathize with her because she's doing these terrible things. And like, because of the time period that if they never give him a name, I realize they just call him like Candyman. Candyman was the son of a slave. Right. Candyman became a painter. Yeah. I'm like, that was weird. I mean, I guess it's like in line again with what the movie is doing of like, talking about him in this way, like keeps him alive and whatever. But, and that made me totally like lose track of what the question was that I was answering.
No, it's all good.
About like the psychosis and like how to reconcile that.
His name is Daniel Robitaille. But I don't think they say it in this movie. I think you're right. But it is listed on like the cast list as Tony Todd as Daniel Robitaille / Candyman.
Interesting.
Maybe
they say it in the sequel or something, and they
right. That's what I was gonna say in the
know.
other ones,
and then like go like backtrack kind of thing.
Before you keep going, has anyone here seen any of the sequels?
No,
I did not know there were sequels until I was looking up the information on this.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think I want to see it.
I don't know if that's. I mean, is Virginia Madsen in any of them? My guess is no. Actually, I think Tony Todd is in them, and then that kind of would make me want to see it. Yeah, I would watch it. I want to continue to support him in this role, in this iconic role.
Candyman: Farewell to the Flesh and Candyman: Day of the Dead, and then the new one that's coming out later this year.
Day of the Dead is what?
Day of the Dead.
Candyman, I'm looking this up now. I don't know. Candyman Farewell to the Flesh was in 95, directed by Bill Condon. And Tony Todd is in it. And I don't think Virginia Madsen or any is in that one. And then Day of the Dead was 1999. And Tony Todd is in it. It was directed by Turi Meyer. And it seems like he's the only one. I'm not going to read these plots, but there are two more.
Yeah.
Fascinating. But yes, back to your actual question. Yeah, I mean, like, it's so hard. I can't speak to like the lived experience of psychosis, but like, I think like the idea that your reality is not really what you think it is, like, sounds very horrifying and like really scary. And like, at what point, are you, I guess it depends, because like, I feel like it's kind of like on the spectrum of how severe that can be. And so like, do you have enough insight to know like what is you and what is like something that's not really present, but that like if you hear voices, because like some people who have schizophrenia like have that insight and they know what they're hearing isn't like their inner monologue, but rather like something else, but they also know that it's not in our reality. And so I think it depends on like what degree of the spectrum of insight does somebody have. If they don't have that insight, then like I imagine that's also very scary for them, because they think that like these things are happening that they don't have any control over. So I think like it really depends on like how aware they are that there's something that they're experiencing that they know other people aren't experiencing, and it's something that's like that feels separate from them.
Of course, you're speaking outside of the experience, so
but based on like what I've heard from people in the past, and just like my understanding of like like what the experience would be to like, I mean, even, this is like not an equivalent at all, but like the experience of like sleep paralysis, for example, which like I have had, where you're waking up and it's kind of that like in between state, and you like see something that like looks like a figure, and like, that it's not real, but it feels very real in that moment. And it's very scary. And that's like, your brain is kind of like not fully in the awake stages yet. And so like, it's kind of making you think or produce things that like aren't really real, but like it feels so real in that moment. And so like that type of fear where it's like, you're questioning reality in that moment. And like, that is a very like scary experience to like not be entirely sure, like, is this real? Is this not real?
Absolutely.
Like what is reality?
Which makes the mind just so incredibly interesting, because it's so powerful in a sense of where, like you said, you can be experiencing something that feels so real and it's not, or like even when you're in your dreams and it feels so real, but it's still just a dream. Like it's nothing that actually ever happened, to you.
Yeah. Like when I wake up and I'm mad at Brian for doing something in my dream, even though I know that he like didn't really do that thing, but like, it's all his fault.
Exactly. It's all Brian's fault. That's what it is. Any other like favorite moments or things that was like, this is a great movie?
Yeah. Like the first half of the movie, I feel like is harder to get through because it's really hard to like sympathize with Helen at all. At least that's how I feel. Like she's just like, again, that like pushy, like she's obviously very ambitious, but like I think that it comes across as more like arrogance and like even the way that she's like, she's gathering data for this project and is kind of being all like snippy at all of these other students that they're interviewing. And it's like, you're the one that like chose this topic. And like, I don't know, like there's just something about like her personality that is gross. And then, and then like, oh very man, her husband is gross. I mean, like, yeah, he's just like the gross professor taking advantage of her because like presumably like that's how their relationship started, and then you see the flirtatious vibes happening elsewhere. So like I really think that the movie like kicks off once Candyman appears in the garage, and like obviously the horror of the situations that she finds herself in is like really progressing the plot and like is very scary and alarming. There's like a part of me that's like maybe it is getting me to like empathize with her because like she may or may not have control over what's happening, or like these things are happening to her to like intentionally make people no longer side with her and like push her out as an outcast as what happened to Candyman. The closer that their stories parallel, the more interesting I feel like the movie gets.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because before she's just like an invasive, like annoying.
Invasive. Perfect word.
And then it's when she gets beat up by the quote unquote physical Candyman, that's just like someone who's a part of the gang in Cabrini Green. You're just like, yeah, girl, that's what you get because you literally were, like playing this little boy, trying to get all this information, and you got yourself in trouble. Also, your Black friend who was like, I don't even want to be in this neighborhood. So like, what do you think they're going to do when they see all of us here? And I think that it also, her only redeeming quality was when she stated, which a lot of the piece socio-economical of the piece was when she got beat up and they put the whole project on lockdown. And she was like, there are 2 people who got killed in this in the projects and no police came, but a white woman gets like a black eye and the whole place is on shutdown. And it's like, yeah, girl, that's true. I'm glad that you are recognizing
finally aware.
Before then, it does not seem like it in the way that you just rolled up in there and thought that you were just going to get all the sweet information that you needed for your thesis. But
if anything, like her saying like they think we're cops, so like we're good to go, like is even more enraging.
Yes.
And like again, like the authority and like arrogance that she just like walks into this space that like is not her space, and like she doesn't belong there, and she's just like, again, like she's consuming and like taking things like by like thinking about the photos that she's taking, like she's just consuming and like taking this culture, and then like the culture is essentially like fighting back. Like that's like Candyman's like coming for her, and I'm all for it, and I really appreciate that he is like taking this retribution. Yes.
Does casting her best friend as a Black woman and casting the cop who is going through everything as a Black man, based on what I've read, like that was clearly on purpose. But do you think that does any of the work to like make any of it feel a little bit better or more inclusive, or allows them to not kind of have to go into other race issues or socioeconomic issues?
That's a question that I would go back and forth on, because obviously the Black friend is there so that she can get into the projects and it be a sense of it being okay because there's someone else there. Because I think that the narrative might have been even different if it were 2 white women that were going there. So I appreciate the acknowledgement of that. And I do appreciate the police officer being Black, because you don't ever get a sense of him taking sides. It's like, oh, you're the victim. Let's find who did this to you when she got beat up. But then when she is the murderer, quote unquote, he's like, okay, well, you're the murderer now, and you can't say anything. You killed these people. I'm going to treat you like a killer. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of
slaps
levels
the table.
Yeah, slaps the table. And it's just like, I think that kind of levels the playing field for me, because you know that he's not playing sides. He's just trying to be a cop. And so you don't think of like, if the cop was white, like white people sticking together and like, you know, whatever. It was just like, he was doing his job. But I also hate the trope of the black best friend that gets killed, you know, like.
Sure. Yeah.
But I understand it for what it was. I think it worked better that all that to say, I think it worked better that both of those characters were black people. I enjoyed the issue of Cabrini Green having the supernatural Candyman, but also having someone physically there as Candyman. So they're not only dealing with someone supernatural that's killing them off, but also like the gangs that are killing them off. And I thought that was just like a great representation of just like, they're already in the projects and dealing with all of this stuff, and like nobody is helping them. And it's not only like just the gangs, but it's also like whatever. And I think it's just like a good parallel, especially with things that are happening now. It's just not surface anymore. There's so many other deeper things that are happening, and we're talking more about like microaggressions and all the stuff that's leading in the system of, you know, which is a whole other topic. But I just enjoyed the fact that it was kind of like they're dealing with the supernatural and physical. They have to get through this, and you know,
it's very real. And I think it's interesting that I guess I'll call him the fake Candyman is like taking on this persona, because like, again, like if the idea is kind of like everyone living in fear of this urban legend, like if you are assuming that, like that is also very scary as like the very real like figure that is tormenting the people who live in this housing project, and like if that's how people feel. And so I think it's interesting that like him also just like taking on this to like reinforce the fear of like speaking about it, that like people have a lot of things to be afraid of, both like you said, like the supernatural, but also like the very real, the very physical, like haunting them essentially.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Lovecraft's country country. Because we're living in Jim Crow laws, but you also have all of these witches and supernatural things. So it's like, well, shit, can you catch a break? It's so much that's happening. But that's what it reminded me of. But it's a great thing. And then, so in essence, the first woman that was killed that Anna Marie heard like screaming through the window, was that the supernatural Candyman, or was it the fake one that was going through those walls and killing people? Like, what do you think?
I don't know, because again, it's like they discover the hole through the mirror. So like there is like a very real kind of like portal door dimension. Man, now I'm thinking about the Paranormal Activity ghost dimension, because we watched that yesterday. Nice. But that was a ghost dimension. This was a very real dimension.
Yes.
So like, you know, I actually don't really know what to think, because like, it's clear that, you know, I think it makes it more convoluted when you like actually physically see the real, the ghosty supernatural Candyman in that space. But like, it's also a space that she went to. It's clearly a space that other people have been inside of. There is like graffiti and like things in there that make you believe that like, it could be either or. Like when she discovers the candy filled with the razor blades, like what, what do we think? Like that's another urban legend that's like not even touched on here. So like, what do you think like that's even coming from, or like, what's the purpose of that?
Exactly. 'Cause that prompted me to think like, is that where all the rumors started coming from of like when people go out for Halloween and you can't take everybody's candy because there might be like stuff in the candy? I was like, was that after this like movie came out, or was that something that has always been a thing and then they brought it into the movie for some reason? Like,
like, I know that urban legend.
What is the urban? The only thing I heard was people saying, don't take everybody's candy.
Oh no, like there's like this urban legend like on Halloween, like I don't think it's like a specific thing where like in the town of blah 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 like this happened. It's just like it's like the urban legend where it's like, oh, like be careful when you go trick or treating because like sometimes like there's people out there that'll put razor blades in candy, like that kind of thing, or like, oh man, I love different kinds of urban legends, like the one with the scraping on the car door one. Do you know that one?
Please tell me.
It's the one where it's like a couple and they're like, parked somewhere like making out and they like hear a scrapey sound. And then the guy's like, oh, I'm going to go like investigate or whatever. And then the other person's like by themselves and then they hear the scrapes and then they get freaked out. They like see something, they get freaked out and they go and they drive the car. And then I think, or maybe I'm confusing all my horror things, and then there's like something else happening, but essentially it's like the guy that she was hooking up with is hanging on the roof of her car and she hears like what she hears is his feet because there's like it's like a thing. Yeah. I'm there's like, oh man, I love urban legends. They're so spooky and keep me up at night.
But also you like never leave someone alone. The minute you say, I'm going to go check out the sound or I'll be right back. Like,
yeah, don't do that.
That's rule number 7.
I'll be right back is your death sentence. Scream taught me that.
Exactly. Don't do it. You go in groups. Okay. Always go in groups if you don't learn anything else from this podcast. Side note, favorite kill, or by favorite, I mean cringiest kill. For the both of you. Question for the both of you.
I'm gonna go with the guy at the desk for two reasons. For two reasons. One, it happened so suddenly. Like I expected there to be more of a buildup, but like she says his name and like he was immediately killed. Like there was no time to like catch your breath.
Great.
And then I mean I'll let Jamie say this, but the real best part of that kill is Candyman's exit.
Oh,
when he flies out the window, like
backwards.
It's hysterical. I mean, even as like, shocking or scary as the scene is when he comes in to kill the psychiatrist, I can't not laugh at him flying backwards out the window. It's so funny every time.
It's hilarious.
I think I was just like, oh yeah, that's spooky. But then I was just like cackling, laughing when he's like, whoop, like Batman.
Literally, because it's like you just lost about 5 cool points, like exiting that way. Like who thought that was okay? You got, he was like sleek down, cool, everything. And then that exit and you're like, okay, well, there's that.
Yeah.
But do you agree about the kill? Is that your favorite one or you have another one?
I do. I just really like the ending because it's very satisfying. And then also like Helen does like the weird moans too. Like she gets like really into it. So I think that's just like a very satisfying ending. What about you?
Yeah. The dog took me out. Like seeing that head, and it was just a ridiculous amount of blood, like it looked like 2 humans died. Like, it was a lot. But, and then the fact that Anna Marie was very bold to go after Helen when Helen had that meat cleaver in her hand.
Oh my God.
When she found him, and it's just like, girl, if you think that this person just killed your dog and you're going to go after her with nothing in your hand and she has a meat cleaver in her hand.
Yeah.
Like, that's not
she also
smart.
ripped out her hair.
It's not a smart move.
Did you notice that?
Yes, I did.
That really upset me.
I can't, but I'm so happy to see her back in the new movie. Being like, you guys learn from my mistakes. We don't say those words. We shh.
Speaking of the end, all the special effects work, at least when it came to like her eye and the burns, were outstanding.
Yes. Her eye makeup was gorgeous, but also that whole entire bee, like we talked about it before, that whole scene was absolutely incredible. I do not know, even if there were no stingers on the bees, I don't want an insect crawling in my mouth. That's okay.
Yeah, that bee.
Like they're too small, and in the nose, in the ears, like I'm good. You can keep all that.
All the bee stuff is like a lot, and it's awesome, but it's a lot. It's also one of the things that has nothing to do with anything else, but like it's just a cool element.
Exactly.
I mean, I know that they killed him with bees, and like, yeah, I get that, but like that's just like a fun little thing that they were just like, how about bees? Okay, yeah, bees, great.
Just everywhere, all over Chicago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do. Having watched it the second time, though, the prologue, if you will, was definitely more effective. Because one, you kind of know what he was about, but two, the idea that like his bees and his not only the bees, but his urban legend still lives without Chicago, but also like the way he died and just like the racism and the classism that happens is still like prevalent in the city itself. So I really thought that was a very good prologue, especially like when on a multi-watch view.
And it's just so crazy too, because on that subject, for him to be a wealthy Black man that just so happened to die where these projects were built, but he's still terrorizing Black people. And it's just kind of like, I know your ashes are here, and so like your essence is here, and it just so happens to be that this is where Black people live, but like you're killing your own people as well. I don't understand that.
There was something also just about him like taking pleasure in the kills that also it's like I don't know if that like necessarily tracks with like whoever his persona was like before he was murdered, like because like I feel like that is kind of like I understand the piece about I guess I understand the piece about how he has to like murder the innocent to like be alive, kind of, essentially. Yeah. But then it's like, why are you targeting like poor Black people as your like target audience? I guess like the other random people who like say his name in the mirror, urban legend, like, but if that's actually happening, or unless like what you said before, like maybe it is the fake Candyman who has like taken on that persona that's actually the one like killing people, and the real Candyman is just doing it for the people who are like saying his name in the mirror, which might just be like the dumb white people in the movie.
Listen, because I was about to say you didn't see not nary a Black person say his name in the mirror. So that's a good point. But the greatest line to me in that movie was, I think it was in the prologue, which kind of sets it up too, with like the creepy choir music that's happening when Candyman is like, "What is blood if not for shedding?" And it's just like, wow, that's a great setup for what is about to happen.
And there's plenty of blood in this movie.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, like when they kill the guy at the end, like Jamie's favorite kill, like the bathroom is covered in blood. Like that doesn't make sense. And it's so neat too.
Neatly placed splotches of blood.
What did you think of the music in this? Because like again, like comparing it to some of these other like more traditional slasher films, like it really stood out to me. And I found it to be like way more unsettling compared to the more like ambiance music that I would say like Halloween or Friday the 13th have.
Yeah, there's definitely something about a choir and an organ that just like sets the intention for you just to be unsettled. And I wrote that in my notes of like this choir and organ combination and the kind of chords that they're playing that are more like dissonant chords that aren't, the happy chords. They're the quote unquote sad chords, and the ones where the notes don't mesh together. So things are out of place and out of line that get you just like really unsettled. But I loved it. And I thought that it was placed in the right spots, like right at the beginning and some of the moments when Candyman first appears, you hear like the choir and the organ in the background. And you said it was Philip Glass, Brian, who did.
Yeah, Philip Glass scored this movie. Who you may or may not know, he's a very famous and successful contemporary opera. I didn't mean you. I meant the listeners. Oh. Sorry. Yeah. But contemporary opera writers. If not one of the most successful, if not the most successful, like contemporary opera. And he says quote, "It has become a classic, so I still make money from that score. Get checks every year."
Listen, and he deserves every single penny for that, because all the dissonance in the chords, and it's just gorgeous, and it's very unsettling, and I loved it. And it was placed very well. It's not overwhelming either. It just adds the right amount of background for Tony Todd's beautiful bass voice. It just fits right into the fold. So but no, I thought it definitely does stand out, as opposed to, like you said, the other slasher movies where there are key motifs, quote unquote, if you will. We get the eek, eek, if we can put that sound effect in there, Brian. You know which one I'm talking about, with like the knife. For like eek, eek. But then you have the for the like other, more contemporary horror movies. But I think those slasher movies rely more on those motifs and those little pockets of music to create a theme for a character, where this one just gave you those unsettling choir and organ noises that kind of encompass the whole movie. It wasn't just when Candyman came out, those sounds came out. So I think that's kind of what separated and blended it together really well.
Music in horror movies is so interesting, because like there's definitely like the tone that you want to set, or like the tension building, and like the old school ones, like in moments where you're like anticipating something about to pop out, like a jump scare kind of thing, you do get the like but like now it's like that really tense silence. Like they're playing with sound in a very interesting way that like really I feel like builds a lot more tension and fear and anxiety in the viewer. But I felt like there were those moments here and there too in this movie where like they're not playing the theme that are these tense moments, and then these other moments where like doing more of the exposition and stuff where they are playing it, and it's just it's really interesting the way that they do it in this particular movie.
It's like the music ends and you get that release of the kill and all that stuff, and you're like, okay, that happened, we made it through, all right, let's keep going. What else is gonna happen? Let's get ready.
Let's climb into the medicine cabinet and go
because that's the natural choice. That's the natural order of events to do that.
Should we do Rotten Tomatoes?
Sure.
Yes, since I finally didn't look this time.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
All right. What are your guesses? Nikisha, you go first.
I'm gonna say 92. But I feel like it's probably really low.
I'm gonna say 73.
Yeah, it's probably
okay.
really
On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 75%.
Oh, I'm getting closer.
Yeah.
75%, and it's, though it ultimately sacrifices some mystery in the name of gory thrills, Candyman is a nuanced, effectively chilling tale that benefits from an interesting premise and some fine performances.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for the time that it came out in.
Totally.
Which is why I would have scored it maybe a tad bit higher, but...
Yeah. Should we do
the S's?
The four S's?
Yes.
It's a hard sound to make, especially when you have a lisp.
You don't have a lisp.
It's a tiny one, like a tiny.
Oh my gosh! Well, I couldn't tell. in the 2 months I've known you.
Fair.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
Okay, Brian, are you gonna explain it?
Please tell us what are these S's.
So the 4 S's,
these S's for us.
Yeah, I'll mansplain the 4 S's for you. Skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. Skulls is kind of how well it deals with human behavior and mental illness, mental health as well. Scares is how much it jump scared you, how scary was it. Shakes is how much can you shake it off? Is it staying with you? And then suggestions are other movies that you could watch for whatever reason. And again, all of these individuals we rank them from 1 to 10, all the S's. Who wants to go first for Skulls?
Jamie.
I'm gonna go. This is hard. A 5, a 4. I don't know. I'm like thinking very heavily on the scene where she's hospitalized, and like for one, that orderly like also drove me crazy. He was such a dick.
Absolutely.
He was awful. And hopefully people who work in hospitals are not terrible people. So
I'm not like that. You're right.
Yeah. Or the psychiatrist. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4. it was like rubbed me wrong way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I gave it a 5 for those reasons. It was, and also it just seemed a little over the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4 as well for all those reasons.
I gave Scares a 2 because there was nothing that like when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, like jumping out of my seat. Even though I've seen it before, there's still some movies where like kills happen and it still gets me. But this one, it was just, and I think mostly because you don't ever really see the murder happen. You just see the aftermath of it. And that's supposed to be the shock, but that's not shocking to me. I need to see like when the doctor died, when the psychiatrist died, like hook in the body and then the flyaway.
I'm Batman.
Got it.
I think I would actually give it a 4. And I think that's because I have never been stung by a bee. And so like the bees really freak me out. And that bee scene is like pretty horrific. The fact that like the bees are in his mouth, he goes to kiss her with the bees.
That's real.
The like the rib cage with the bees, like it's so it really freaked me out more than the actual murders. And then and like actually scared me. And then I think I would say like maybe the end is like a little jump scary, or even the part in the beginning when the random girl who's hooking up with Ted Raimi does it, the Candyman in the mirror, and he like appears where the bathrobe is, like, you know, spooked me a little bit, but yeah, not a ton.
I'm also going with the 2. This while I enjoy it, this is not like a scary, like jump scary movie for me. Unlike the Paranormal Activity movies that get me like nothing else.
It's just scare after scare after scare. Like 90 minutes of it. For Shakes, I gave it a 3. I mean, it's a great story and everything, but there's like nothing that lives in my subconscious that I don't want to live in my subconscious, like Dogtooth. It's like I need that to go away and to never think about that ever again. So yeah, I would give it a 3 because that dead dog scene really was like, what? No, not the puppy. Yeah.
I think I'd also give it a 3. Yeah, it makes me really sad when they show dead animals and things. Other than, I guess, like the underlying fear of like, would I ever do Bloody Mary? And like, I have access to all these mirrors and maybe I could do it, but like, I never will because it's too scary. That's the only thing that I would be able to shake off.
I'll give it a 4. Same reasons as you all, but I'll just give it one more because I just feel like I'll definitely remember it in terms of what it was trying to do. And like, especially I'll actually remember it more from the second viewing and talking through like a little bit more of what it's actually trying to do. It will definitely stick with me more than the first viewing, like one and done type of thing.
Do you want to give your suggestions, Brian?
So mine's a little weird and outside the box, but the new Candyman movie is being directed by Nia DaCosta. She's also going to be directing the Captain Marvel sequel. And I've never seen any of her work before. So she has a movie that's on Hulu right now when we're recording this. I don't know if it's going to last there, but it's called Little Woods. It stars Tessa Thompson and Lily James.
I love Tessa Thompson.
I've heard her on podcasts, Nia, but I don't really know her work, and I'm really looking forward to the Candyman. So combination of this and kind of like seeing what her aesthetic is, what she could do. I don't think it's a scary movie at all. I think it's just a drama about these two women who find themselves falling into the illegal world of the cross-border drug trade after their mother dies. So like it seems more like thriller-esque. But I want to get her sense of style and what she's doing so that I can kind of go into Candyman kind of like enjoying it a little bit more with a little bit more context around the movie itself.
What she does, yeah.
So that's what I'm going with. I haven't watched it, so like I don't know if it's good or not. But I am interested in what it is.
So I have two, and I feel like they were both probably alluded to or mentioned in some form or fashion. So my first one is Get Out. If you're going on like race motifs, I mean, I feel like everybody has hopefully seen Get Out by now, but just a really excellent horror movie that focuses very heavily on race, and it's just such an excellent, I mean, so much better than how Candyman portrays it in like a very horrifying way, but like also very unsettling. And I think just like an even better version of what Candyman was trying to do, very well executed than Get Out. But I won't talk about it because I don't want any spoilers in case there's like the one person that's never seen this movie. And then my second recommendation is Urban Legend, because again, I love urban legends. And this movie is a great slasher film that's like all geared towards urban legends, and like that's how the people get murdered. So great film. But
I have to watch that because I have not seen that. I have not seen.
Oh man, it's a good one.
Yes, excited. So if we're just talking like lead black man in a horror movie, I'm going to say Night of the Living Dead, even though I hate the ending of that and I won't spoil it, but the ending is terrible. But the lead actor in that is phenomenal. It's from the 1960s. Great movie. If you're talking about not believing women when they say they haven't done anything, then Invisible Man. But the new one, because
so good.
What is it? Elizabeth Moss, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cringeworthy. Yelled at the TV a lot. And then the last one, just if you want like supernatural horror things, we talked about this, like the Nightmare on Elm Street of like the believing in someone, and with it, the same thing. It's like you had to like believe in some sense, or you had to have fear and you fed off of that. But, just having a supernatural villain that fed off of the thoughts in your mind, basically. Nightmare on Elm Street or it would be my suggestions.
If you like murder with hooks, I know what you did last summer.
Oh my gosh, they used to all be streaming on Hulu. And I definitely watched the second one because Brandy is in that.
Oh yeah, Brandy's in the second one.
I watched.
Yeah,
that's I still know.
Cinderella to this.
That's I still know.
Cinderella. I still know Cinderella.
Yes. I know who you are, Cinderella, and I'm coming to get you. And it's Bernadette Peters, just like as the villain chasing after her.
This sounds wonderful.
Wait, this is real? This is really what it is? Oh my God.
Actually, but you know what? Well, spoiler alert. Brandy lives, I believe, in the movie, which was surprising to me because she was the sidekick best friend. I thought she was going to die.
I guess the only thing to say is it's possible.
I hate you.
All right, we can stop now. We can stop now.
Well, on that note, thank you guys for joining us. You can find us on Instagram and I was going to say Instagram and Hulu.
We're not on Hulu yet.
Instagram and Twitter at Talk Horror Pod, POD. Follow us for all the updates and give us suggestions on what you want us to watch and talk about, or things that we might not have seen that we can discuss on here. Mm-hmm. And any last thoughts, anyone?
Oh yeah, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll end the note on bees? Question mark?
Bees?
Bees? I was going to say be my victim.
Oh, I like that one too.
Crossover. Bees?
Bees, be my victim. Bees? Okay, guys, thanks. We're going insane now. Bye.